people always want to know, I guess, what it was like. I mean, it's a part of my life, just like September 11th is a part of my life. And I think people are always curious. But I mean, hopefully people will know me for different things going forward. I'm always trying to be like a Renaissance person and always trying to reinvent myself. So it's Rachel Uchitel, something completely different. So people are interviewing me about something else. It always does tend to steer back to that for other people. But as long as that is a trajectory for people to interview me about something else, I'm okay with it because I realize that sometimes is what gets me in the door. So, I mean, I have to go with what I'm given.
That makes sense. What about, like, I know you've talked throughout the years about, like, your NDA, which you've signed. Like, what is the status of that? Because you were part of this HBO documentary. Like, is that over? Like,
I don't want to talk much about that. All I'll say is that I do believe NDAs are important. For people, I am just not a proponent of signing NDAs if you're signing them to cover up people's bad behavior. So I also feel like, I'm a great person to talk to as a connoisseur on NDAs. If anybody wants to talk to me about one they might have to sign, you can DM me on Instagram. Signing NDAs is a really tricky scenario and can get you in a lot of trouble. So it's something I've struggled with for 14 years. And I'm very glad that, I had a piece come out in the New York Times. It's like a 20-minute read. I know it's a really long read, but it was a phenomenal piece that they did. And it really explained how tough my life has been signing one.
right. Because, I mean, you talk about relating it to your podcast, people that are misunderstood. Now you're misunderstood, and technically you're not supposed to talk about it throughout all these years.
Right, but and the legal battle of cutting your voice, sort of, and what that does to you. But why people sign things, and why, if you sign them, you might want to talk later. And it's not about dirty details. That's a totally different scenario. And again, I don't want to get into it, but people can read that New York Times article if they want. Being in a battle just to have your voice back, just so you could talk about who you are so that you're not misunderstood, is the issue. I mean, I was breaking my NDA just by anyone doing an article on me just by saying, oh, Rachel's pregnant, or Rachel is getting her hair done. Whatever the article might have been about, that was breaking the NDA. That was crazy. That was nuts. Just for me being, quote unquote, somewhat famous or a public figure or anything. If I wanted to do a podcast, that could be breaking an NDA. I had to disappear from life. And that's not fair. I'm a person. I was a person before. I'm a person after. I can't just go put my head in the mud. I have to make a living. I have a daughter. It's not fair. So you can't say just because I got, quote unquote, famous because of you, that I'm not allowed to make a living because you think that my living is always based on you. I don't want anything to do with you. I just need to make a living going forward. And no one's going to hire me as a school teacher. No one's going to hire me for certain things anymore. So I have to do what I can do. But I don't want to talk about that scenario. But I need to be able to do something, right? So that's what I was trying to get my voice back for.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
I think so.
That you're not allowed to talk about going to get a haircut just because you signed an NDA.
Yeah. Well, the media is not allowed to talk about it, right? So if I'm spotted somewhere and I'm in the paper for it, that could be considered breaking my NDA. Anytime I was in the paper, it was considered breaking the NDA. That's not fair. I should have agency to be my own famous person. I was quote unquote famous before because I had my picture in the paper, right, from 9/11. So I was a person before. So that was the point.
And the status now is different because you have a podcast now.
The status now is different. I mean, the bottom line is I have been able to make my point known and get amazing lawyers that worked pro bono for me, that believed in my cause, that helped me. I had very bad lawyers before. I have people that believed in me. So
to be like, do you feel like that has to be like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders, right? I mean, this podcast now exists. We have Perez, we have Stormy Daniels coming, like you're able to speak, right?
Yeah. And again, it's just because I want the platform to be able to let other people who have been in the same situation that have felt misunderstood be able to come in and talk about their situations, because that makes me feel like I'm doing something, right? It makes me feel like I'm offering something, that I'm moving forward in life instead of always talking about the past. Like, to me, that feels good.
Why do you think the media is so, like, why? It is a mob mentality. It comes and it passes and there's another story, but why? Why are we as like a culture so obsessed with someone's downfall, so to speak?
I mean, it's really interesting because it's the same people that build someone up are always the same people that are pulling them back down when they get to the top of the pedestal, right? So, I think, I don't know why it happens that way, but it's really difficult to watch. But it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, also, too. You see a lot of people that are not living in reality, and they are living a total smoke and mirrors life. And people are just obsessed with this kind of reality TV and reality, everything being, really exaggerated. And it makes people's lives at home feel better to watch that explosion happen, because then when they get home from work, they can sit there and watch how everybody else's life is exploding, and theirs that seems so boring is, not so boring anymore because it's at least calm, right? I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know. But that's why, people are reading those magazines, or they're watching those Dateline episodes, or all those things are watching all that reality TV that you cover. I mean, all that stuff has such high ratings because everything is on such a heightened level, right? So these huge scandals with infidelity or murder or whatever, like the Murdaugh murders, everybody was so into that a couple weeks ago, right? Because nobody could believe this guy would, kill his son and his wife, and do all these deceitful things. And the whole nation was watching and obsessed with this guy in the South. And instead of being disgusted, I mean, everyone was disgusted, but at the same time, everybody was like feeding on it, right?
Yeah.
And it was this drama that nobody could believe, and just like sucking on all the, the information from it. So I just think it's very interesting.
What about, because you are, you could talk on misunderstood, you could talk about someone being misrepresented in the media, but you can also talk about like NDAs, having gone through this. Like, what do you think of like Tiger's current situation, like with his girlfriend that he broke up with? I guess he kicked her out of the house when she was on vacation, and now she has an NDA that she signed. It's a little different than yours, right? Because she signed it in the beginning.
Well, again, I mean, we're just speculating because these are two people that we don't know their situation. So I think from what we're seeing in the news, she broke her NDA by bringing it into a public court. And she did that to try and get it out of arbitration. Arbitration is where NDAs go to get hidden and die, and where no one can hear what happens. And she did not want that to happen because she felt overpowered by all of his, lawyers and money, and she didn't think she would win in arbitration. So I think her strategy, or her lawyer's strategy there, was to